and welcome back to another episode of Eat, Drink, Talk, cooking from a shoebox in Tehran. Today we're going to be making a Yemeni spiced fish recipe. One of the main components of Yemeni cooking is a spice mixture called hawaj, which we're going to be making today. In our hawaj we have 5 spices. We have some cardamom, black peppercorns, some coriander seeds, some caraway seeds, and some cumin. We're just going to take our spices and just put them on the stove and just toast them for a few minutes, shaking the pan occasionally just until the spices smell fragrant. The only spice that we need to do something a little bit different with is our cardamom. Cardamom has a quite tough green husk around the outside. If you just press down on your cardamom till you hear a little bit of a crunch noise, and when you open it up, there's some little seeds inside. It's the seeds that we want. The black husk, or the green husk rather, itself doesn't have a lot of flavor and it can be quite tough to grind, so we can discard the husk. It's just the seeds that we want. So I'm just going to pop the seeds into my spice grinder and then we just grind them up. And we're just going to grind our spices to a nice fine powder. And if you just smell that, that really smells delicious. You can really tell the difference when you've ground your spices fresh versus using powdered pre-ground spices. So the next thing we're going to do is make our marinade for our fish. So I'm just going to take some yogurt, and the yogurt I buy here is pretty amazing stuff. I buy it from a little dairy around the corner. It even has this beautiful crust on the top. So I'm going to take some of the yogurt and just put that into a bowl, along with some salt, and finally our spices. So I'm just going to tip my spice grinder down, shake it a few times, and then just scatter the spices over top. And even as you stir it, you can really smell how fragrant your spices are. This is going to be really delicious. Fish I'm going to be using today, it's quite similar to sea bass, and what I asked my fishmonger here to do is to make it flat. And I know that fish with the heads on makes a lot of people uncomfortable or squeamish. My advice, in all honesty, is just get over it. I think there's so much information in the head of a fish that can tell you how fresh the fish is. The first thing I look at is the eyes. The eye should be nice and clear and glossy like this, not sunken, not dull, no patches of red in them. They should be nice and clear. Under the flaps here we have the gills. This is where all the blood is. So if you think about when you cut yourself, your blood is red, and then as it oxidizes it turns more of a brown color as it forms a scab. The same thing happens with the blood in the gills. Another quite good thing is just to feel the fish. Your fingerprints should spring back right away. They shouldn't leave any sunken marks in the fish. If the fish is old, or if it's been left on the ice and the ice hasn't been changed regularly, what can happen is this muscle can become waterlogged. When you feel your finger alongside the fish, it should feel nice and firm. So what I'm going to do is take our fish and just put it in our marinade and rub our marinade all over the fish. This is the time to love your fish. You want to give it a nice massage in all of that yogurt and all of those spices so that it will really pick up a nice flavor. You see how the whole fish is nicely coated in the marinade? This is what we're looking for, a nice coating inside and out. And we're going to leave our fish to marinate for 2 hours before we barbecue it. You can even leave it longer. Generally, I like to cook fish the same day that I buy it because I like to eat it when it's super fresh, but you can also leave it overnight. So we're going to leave this now for 2 hours or so in its lovely little yogurt and spice bath, and then we're going to come back to it in a little bit. So the next thing we're going to make is our tahini honey paste. What I'm going to put into a bowl is just a little bit of yogurt, not too much, and then some tahini. Tahini, if you're not familiar with it, is best described as sort of Middle Eastern peanut butter. It's made with crushed sesame seeds. And then I'm going to add a little bit of honey, just a little bit to make it sweet. And finally, the last last thing I'll add is some walnuts, and I'm just going to tip those in. And then we just give everything a nice stir. And so what you have this kind of thick, slightly gloopy kind of a paste with crunchy nuts in it that we have alongside our fish. It's really, really tasty and delicious. So our fish has been marinating quite nicely now for about 2 hours, so what I'm going to do is prepare it for the barbecue. The first time I ever barbecued in Iran, I was really shocked that we set our barbecue up in the middle of a bunch of satellite dish cables and things, but I'm pretty used to it now. My rooftop here in Tehran has a beautiful view of the mountains. It's in a really peaceful part of the city. I just love barbecuing up here. So I'm going to cook my fish on the barbecue, and what we're going to do is put our fish into a fish basket. Clamping your fish into a fish basket can seem like a slightly mean thing to do when you have such a beautiful fish. It can kind of squash the little guy a little bit, but such is life. So I'm just going to slide our fish out of our marinade and then just lay our fish quite nicely inside the basket. And these little guys are brilliant. If you ever tried barbecuing fish without one, you know how difficult it can be to turn your fish. This is going to make our life so much easier. And this is when you have to be a little bit cruel to be kind to your fish. You just slide it inside the basket, close the basket, and then there's a little flap that this slides shut. Sometimes the little eyeball starts to pop out. It's a little bit horrible. But then we have a nice tight fish in our basket. It's very, very easy to turn. In Yemen, the most popular place to eat this fish is actually in the fish markets. What you do is you buy your fish, and then next to the fish markets they have these men with these kind of big inferno-like ovens. They take your fish and they sort of paint it with marinade, and then they just roast it on the bottom, or sometimes they even slap the fish on the side. So we want to be cooking our fish at a high temperature. If you prefer to roast your fish in the oven rather than barbecuing it, you can put it in the oven at about 225 degrees Celsius. You want to roast it for between sort of 20 to 35 minutes. Okay, so our fish is done. We barbecued it for about 10 minutes or so per side, and I'm just going to show you how to check that your fish is cooked. So I'm just going to flip the top and just slide the top off of our fish. And then if you just take a fork, if you just prod at the top of the fish, and you should see that the flesh is flaking quite easily. The meat should be falling apart. That's how you can check your fish is done. If you want to eat this really Yemeni style, what you can do is just empty your fish out onto a newspaper. And then just serve it on the newspaper, eat it with your fingers, and have it with your tahini honey paste. Really delicious. So that's how we make our Yemeni spiced fish with tahini honey paste cooked on the roof.